In my last video, we seen a video from a channel that was kinda sketchy, and upon looking into the channel, a certain video caught my eye. Let's dive in.
And everywhere. All of these old buildings are not our culture. They're a previous culture that existed there, and we simply inherited these buildings.
If you're as confused as I am, I don't blame you. But it only gets weirder from here, fellas.
Have a look at the sewer system beneath San Francisco. Who built that? Or did they just do that? The settlers, when they came out on their gold rush, they thought they better go down and dig this incredible sewer system for the city that was going to come? No, it was already there. A lot of those old buildings were already there. You look at San Francisco around about, 50 to 30 years after, the whole city looks like it would hold millions of people. And how did those 500,000 people build all of that in 30 years with that incredibly complex design?
I'm curious now. How did they manage to complete that? Assuming that the information that you've given us is all correct. How in the world did they do it? I'll get into it later on in this video, but first I need to give you a taste of this insane rabbit hole that I've just discovered from watching Elon Musk videos.
And all like European style. What we're told is Roman Greco style, we're told it is. Same here in Australia. There's stuff here like Queen Victoria Markets in Sydney, built in 1820, which is the most incredible looking architecture. But we're told by the same token that Australia was populated by convicts. They had some convict ships out here. Nothing makes sense.
Unfortunately for him, the more you hear about his theories, the less sense they make. So far, he's claimed that cities like San Francisco and Melbourne have been built by ancient civilizations, and that there were mud floods and planned demolitions to cover their tracks. Ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to get into everything Tartaria and Tartarian Empire.
All of it. We used to think, well, the Dark Ages, we don't know what that is. We realized that they invented the Dark Ages and just put that in there to push a whole bunch of stuff back in the past. And we realized, some of history might be wrong, but no, it's all fabricated. The whole lot is fabricated. We lived in a culture where you had to go out and work for a living and earn a wage in order to pay to be alive. You would never have had the time or the inclination to construct buildings that look like that and function in the way they did. These buildings were created as artistic statements. I mean, they were functional, they were power sources, they were generators. They used to generate their own free electricity, all sorts of things. But Tartaria was all over the world. It was an advanced culture that had free energy. It was based on etheric energy, and it existed up until around about 200 to 250 years ago. And around about 1880, the late 1800s, they repopulated the world with children, and then they taught them whatever history they wanted. And you got to wonder where all the children came from. Just look up foundling homes and foundlings and orphan trains across the United States, across Europe. They were everywhere, children everywhere. They had amusement parks where they had babies on display. They had baby raffles in Paris in 1915. And now we've got to this point where they're basically harvesting all the souls of those people. It's like they grew their herd, I've often referred to the earth as a people farm. We're living in a people farm, and people don't really realize it. I think of each country as its own separate pen. And so it's a natural progression from what happened in Tartaria. I mean, this will be the complete loss of human consciousness if they are able to lead us in there and actually able to get away with this. It will be the end of humanity. But when you really look at what we had, I mean, it's incredibly inspiring to see the art and to see the ancient history that's right there in our own cities if you just go out and look around your city with the right eyes.
What the fuck? Oh, cut the music. Cut to me. I didn't cut the music, man. Flipping heck, man. Honestly, man, this is this is so bad. Oh my gosh, man. If you guys really some of you guys weren't ready, bro. I just know some of you guys were not ready for that. The comments are even worse. As a historian, I must admit our recent history stinks of fabrication and propaganda. The mud flood, Tartaria, or whatever you want to call it, seems plausible. There are others talking about this. Fact or fiction, it's incredibly interesting. Sorry. There's a level of humor to have a historian here say these things. Oh my goodness, man. I am actually sitting here and literally thinking the same time. There is something bizarre about this really we care experiencing it now. It seems faked. I'm so sorry. I don't even know if that's a bot or not, but I just thought I'd read it because of how funny it sounds. It's repeating. That's my gut feeling right now. The erasing of the old world. Ready to imprint their views on a blank canvas. The winners always get to write the history. Nah, I think that's an upset stomach. Pepto-Bismol's got you covered though. Oh boy, there's a lot to take in right there. But we'll get to it slowly, step by step. I'll be chopping off each one of these arguments and really blowing this theory out of the window. First, let's get into San Francisco, shall we?
It's already there. A lot of those old buildings were already there.
If you want to follow along, go to the website sfpoc.org and click the About Us section. And after that, you'll have to click a few more buttons and you'll find yourself in a page where there's a link to a 60-page PDF that really elaborates on the history of the water pumping system. Now, in this document, I just wanted to highlight something that I thought was really interesting. So, Richard Henry Dana Jr. wrote in a book of his how him and his crew came to land their ship on the Bay of San Francisco, and where they found that there weren't many people living there at the time. There was barely a village even to begin with. And at the time, there was a Presidio and there was a mission called Mission Dolores that was built by the Spanish military. And there were a few Native Americans living in the outskirts, but really, the city hadn't even been built to what it was during the gold rush. Also, during the mid-1800s, the city was destroyed multiple times and had to be built just as many times.
Have a look at the sewer system beneath San Francisco. Who built that?
Now I'm going to direct your attention to a website that I found to be quite fascinating. Now in this Google search, it took me a couple of seconds to find this webpage, and it tells you everything about how the sewer system in San Francisco was built. Yes, the old engineering records were lost in 1906 due to an earthquake, but you don't then just jump to the conclusion that the city was inherited.
Same here in Australia. There's stuff here like Queen Victoria Markets in Sydney, built in 1820, which is the most incredible looking architecture. But we're told by the same token that Australia was populated by convicts. They had some convict ships out here. You know, nothing makes sense.
Of course, nothing would make sense if you didn't do any amount of research. Okay, you can go clearly to the history page of the Queen Victoria Marketplace website, and they'll give you a detailed chronological order documentation of the history of of how it's built. Like, this is silly. At this point, I'm just feeling bad for the guy. There seems to be something that he's missing. I don't know if he's got a few screws loose in his head, because man.
And around about 1880, the late 1800s, they repopulated the world with children, and then they taught them whatever history they wanted. And you got to wonder where all the children came from. Just look up foundling homes and foundlings and orphan trains across the United States, across Europe. They were everywhere, children everywhere. They had amusement parks where they had babies on display. They had baby raffles in Paris in 1915.
I was as confused as you were when he said those words, but then I realized that there was some context to what he was saying that he didn't give us. So first off, in 1911, the problem of abandoned children and orphanage was very high, okay? A lot of kids were being abandoned, and this was before the war even began. Child labor was at a high level, it was seen as normal, and so a lot of these children, really, their best case scenario was to be found and then taken to these foundling hospitals where they could be taken care of. And you can honestly see what their intention was with the raffle, a fun event to try to find a family for the orphans that were there. So yeah, tons of context that he did not provide to us, and it pisses me off to see things like this because a lot of people fall for this stuff, man. And I can't blame some of them because a lot of this comes from the distrust that we have in the media and what we see in the mainstream. They've been lying to us for years, and if you can't see that, I think you're part of the problem as well. But the quest for knowledge is not yet done, folks. We need to look more into this. Tartaria or the Tartaria.